What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So this is the last game from the opening day of the 2021 NBA playoffs, and that was the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics. And this is a matchup between um, one of the more rugged veteran teams in the Eastern Conference, a team that many people for a couple of years had championship aspirations for, Boston, and they're going up against a team that's probably the most watched team in the playoffs. By that I mean, when I say watched, I know there are a lot of Laker fans out there, but a lot of people are looking to just see how good this Brooklyn Nets team really is. Um, you know, are they really as dominant, and will they be as dominant as people make think that they can potentially be? Now, during the regular season, they've been awesome offensively, but on the defensive end, they've been horrible at times. And they've lost to certain teams that they should not have lost to, and they've barely beaten some teams they should have blown out. When you look at the history of NBA champions, for that matter, you look at the history of NBA finalists, you're very hard pressed when you go through the 75-year history of the NBA to find a team that rank as low as Brooklyn did during the regular season. Now, some of that could have been because of the fact that they didn't play with each other, the big three, and their starting five only played in a handful of games together. We saw that with the Clippers. Some of it, is chemistry issues. Some of it is just maybe, look, when you're really good, sometimes you only play at 75% capacity, and it's enough to beat most teams. I think most teams today, most organizations now have a philosophy where these players make so much money and they are doing everything they can to protect their investments. So, like when a guy like James Harden goes out for a sprained hamstring, instead of him coming back in 3 weeks, you know what? Just to be safe, let's shut him down for 5 weeks. Okay. To the detriment of the fans, they don't get to see what their money's paying for, which is to see the best team out there. And from the fans' perspective, that sucks. You know what I'm saying? Which is one of the many reasons why sports fans have become very antagonistic in their feelings toward athletics and sports in general. But from an organization standpoint, I can understand why they do that. So today, at least, well, last night, the Nets defense looked better. Okay, the final score, 104-93, was reminiscent of a game of the last, you know, 15 years ago or something like that. Um, Neither team shot the ball particularly well. Brooklyn was 42%, but Boston was only 37%. The Nets struggled from 3-point range. I think they were only 8 of 34. Boston was 11 of 30, which is 37%, which is right on league average. Um, the Nets won the rebounding battle 50-40 overall. And, points in the paint, which really doesn't matter as much as it used to. These games back in the day before the 3-point shot became so, um, you know, became, so prominent. Oftentimes, these games were won in the trenches. Who won the rebounding battles and who won the points in the paint? Now it's reversed. It's flipped. It's who won the 3-point battle. And technically, it was Boston, but when you have Kevin Durant, when you have Kyrie Irving, when you have James Harden combined for 82 points, Joe Harris chipped in with 10, so that's 92 points from their best four players. That was enough. And when you combine that with the fact that They control the boards much more so than they normally do. That's one of the weaknesses that they have. Um, and the fact that they played really good defense, it was enough to seal the deal. Now, early on in the game, um, Boston was winning. Okay, Jason Tatum, who had I think 22 points, started off pretty hot. Looked like he was going to have maybe a 35-point game or something like that. Um, for the most part, the Celtics were leading pretty big at first. The Nets came back. I think the Nets were up at halftime. No, no, I think the Nets were losing at halftime, but it was a close game. I think the Nets took the lead in the third quarter behind largely Kevin Durant, finally getting it going. I think he wound up with 32 points and 12 rebounds. Um, it was sort of nip and tuck for most of the way until late in the game. Brooklyn was able to pull away. I think Brooklyn was leading something like 82-80 or 82-79, but then they went on a little run and they pushed their lead up by as much as 17, ultimately winning by 11-point margin. Um, Look, Boston isn't your typical seventh seed. Um, Boston is a hard out. You know what I'm saying? And the Eastern Conference, to me, I know it gets a reputation for being weaker, but I don't know if that's the case this year where it's so top heavy. And back in the day, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there were a lot of Eastern Conference series that were totally uncompetitive in the first round, like Blowout City. I don't know if that's going to be totally the case this year. Um, you know, there are a lot of look. You don't have a lot of what I would call terrible teams in the playoffs. I think right now you have teams that on any given night, if they can get their stars to perform at a high level, they could steal a game. Now the Sixers and Wizards play today. I don't anticipate the Wizards winning this series, but if Philly comes out there and think that they're just going to easily win this series, people could be in for a surprise. Okay, we'll see. But tell me what you think about this game. I think James Harden had 21 points. I think something like 8 rebounds and 9 assists. Um, Kyrie had 20 something, 26 or something like that. No, I think he had 29 and 6 rebounds. So the big three came through. They did what they had to do, which is win the first game of this series. I think the Nets are probably going to win this series. I want to give Boston one game. I'm just going to go ahead and give Boston a game, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Nets swept this series. Tell me what you guys think.